Hey y'all, it's Miss Checka. It is time for part 3, the exciting conclusion of Cask of Amontillado. So when we left off, our pals were way down deep in the catacombs underneath our main character, Montresor's palazzo in Venice. And we are now about to enter the final room, okay? So it says, at the most remote end of the crypt, there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains piled to the vaults overhead in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. I want to note here, this paragraph is very Poe in the sense that it is super boring. Like, he is about to give us a Home Depot, Lowe's Home Improvement style like diagram of this room, which is really boring, but also why, right? Whenever Poe does this thing where he starts to describe things, you should always ask yourself why, because he doesn't really describe anything else. Like, he hasn't given us a single description of Venice other than like there's a party going on, the palazzo. We don't know what Montresor looks like. We don't know what Fortunato looks like. We have like there's just not a whole huge amount of description. And so now all of a sudden we're going to get like dimensions, okay? So it says, and bear with because it is a slow paragraph, 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. So here you have this big room, and when he says human remains, he means bones. So there's like bones, 3 sides. But on the 4th side, no bones. From the 4th side, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Okay, so bones, 3 walls. 4th wall, no bones. They've been taken down and they're in a pile on the floor. Within the wall thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceive still an interior crypt or recess in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. Okay, you see what I mean? Weirdly, a lot of dimensions and details. So we have 3 sides, 4th side, there's no bones, but there's another room, okay? And this other room, he just finished describing to us, is more the size of like a cubby hole, right? 3 feet, 4 feet, 6 or 7 feet. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roofs of the catacomb, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. Tiny little room, big columns, solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depth of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. So he's got the torch. He's sticking the torch in. It's not very deep, but it's so dark in there the torch can't even see to the back. So he's like, what's in there? What's in there? Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucrezi, oh, he's an ignoramus, interrupted my friend as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. And y'all, with all the love in my heart, I am giving Fortunato the benefit of the doubt that he's not dumb, he's just drunk. But even now, like, we are like way down in the bone tunnels underneath this man's palazzo. And even then, Fortunato innocently in his heart fully believes Montresor when he's like, yeah, that little tiny crypt inside of the bigger crypt, yeah, that's where the wine is. Why don't you go look in there? Why don't you go look in there? And he's still susceptible to this reverse psychology. So Fortunato goes in, and it says that he what's to say? It says he stares stupidly, stood stupidly bewildered. So he literally, even to this moment, is like, where's the wine? Where's the wine? A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. Y'all, fetters, Fetters, those are chains. Those are chains. If you have ever read Dickens' A Christmas Carol, that's how Jacob Marley comes in, is that he's dramatically shaking his chains, his fetters, and it talks about it. It's like clink, 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 clink. So yeah, spoiler alert, there's no wine. There's no wine in this story. The Amontillado never comes up in the story. The story is called Cask of Amontillado. There is no Amontillado. But instead, Fortunato has just been chained to the solid granite at the back of this room. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, and from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was much too astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. Okay, so there's like staples in the wall. This dude is chained in. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help feeling the niter. It is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Well, then I positively must leave you. But I must first render you all the little attention in my power. But the Amontillado? Said my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. True, I said. The Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. All right, that's the meanest thing that Montresor has done so far, which is he keeps repeating the thing that he said from the beginning of the story of like, you should really go home. I really encourage you to go home. This is really bad for your health. Except now, of course, like it's in a very ironic, like, yeah, you should go home, shouldn't you? I'll take care of you. And the guys, balled up. And also, giant red flag from earlier, if you didn't catch it, because I didn't want to do a spoiler and like point it out. But one of the many red flags in this story that Fortunato should have picked up on, why does Montresor have a trowel? Why would anybody randomly just be carrying around a trowel? Do you carry a trowel? I've never seen anybody. Like I have hired contractors in my house to like build things and they still were not carrying trowels just like casually, right? So the fact that he has like, oh yeah, here's this trowel I carry around. I'm a mason, I'm a stone builder. That was our red flag. So he's now like building the wall with the trowel that he had earlier like taken out of his cape with this big flourish. He began to vigorously wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of masonry. So a tier is like a layer, right? Brick, 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 brick. I soon uncovered, I soon discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in a great measure worn off. Oh man, Fortunato, why are you picking now to sober up? But like, Fortunato sobering up in the worst possible moment. The earliest indication I had of this was of the low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. Then there was a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, the third, the fourth, and then I heard the vibrations, the furious vibrations of the chain. So Fortunato's in there shaking his chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat down among the bones. So Fortunato, rather, is in there crying and moaning. And not only is it not making Montresor feel sad or, oh no, what have I done to my friend? But he stops so he can listen to it more carefully. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment, I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. Okay, in this entire story, from beginning to end, this is the only time that Montresor blinks. It's the only time, and it doesn't actually give us an indication that he feels remorse, but it's the only time that he stops. So he pulls out his sword. A rapier is a sword, and he kind of like taps around in there. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs, and I felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. So even the tiny glimmer that we had of like he paused and he kind of doubts that, oh, maybe he's regretting his action. No. The thing that is reassuring him, the fabric of the walls, y'all, is stone. It's bone and stone. So he's like, oh, it's solid. I'll go back to work. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. Y'all, I started babysitting when I was pretty young, and I used to do that too. Whenever I babysat a toddler and they cried, I just would cry louder, right? Honestly, I still kind of do that with teenage students sometimes. But that's what he's doing. Fortunato is in there, he's sobering up, and he's starting to scream in terror. As you can imagine, he's in the dark there, chained up, and it's starting to dawn on him, what his awful fate is. And Montresor is mocking him just by yelling louder. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th, and there remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo, over our wine. The Amontillado, I said. Yeah, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the palazzo? The Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone. Yes, I said. Let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor! Yes, I said, for the love of God. But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, Fortunato! No answer. I called again, Fortunato! No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. Y'all, there's nobody in the house. It told us that from the first page of the story. The only people in the house were the servants, and the servants are gone because of the reverse psychology that he used on them to go party, go party. So when Fortunato is trying in this last desperate attempt to be like, hey, aren't people expecting us? Like, how about my wife, Lady Fortunato? He's like, yeah. And the jingling of the bells, to me, this is one of the most horrifying details of the whole thing. The whole time, Fortunato is dressed like a harlequin. Like, he's got the whole jester outfit on. And now this like gruesome thing is happening to him, and he still has like jingle jingle comedy bells on. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make the end of my labor. Again, second and very rare expression of anything resembling remorse or emotion on the part of Montresor, and he doesn't even chalk it down to anything other than like, oh, it's my heart, it's not my conscience, it's just, it's so damp here. I hastened to make up an end of my labor. I forced the one last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace resquiat. So there's like the last few things to dissect or emphasize, or whatever you want to call it. And pace resquiat is in Latin, rest in peace, right? That's where we get RIP from. 1. 2, how long has Fortunato, like his body, corpse, whatever, been walled up in there at this point in the narration? 50 years, right? So Montresor has just finished telling us the story, and he said, I did this 50 years ago. And then third and like chilling thing is when he says he replaced the bones. That, along with the trowel, is telling us how premeditated and how cold this whole murder is. He planned out the entire thing down to he had chosen the room, he took down the bones, he brought the trowel with him, he left the building materials there. Like, I'm gonna brick somebody in alive is not a spontaneous thing. Like, he thought that out. And that, again, is a very common Poe thing in his murder stories of like, this is not a murder of passion. This is a like, I hate you and I'm thinking about your destruction and I planned it out and now I've executed it. So my middle school teacher, my junior high teacher read this to me when I was in junior high school, and that is how I'm all messed up. And so I have taken it upon myself to like read this to many, many, many middle schoolers to mess them up. And now, dear viewer, I have messed you up a little bit. Listen, hit like, hit subscribe. If there's another story or classic that you would like to do as a read aloud, please tell me so in the comments. And I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all. Oh, and don't follow anybody into the bone tunnels under the house. Don't take drinks from frenemies. And most especially, if you are in bone tunnels underneath somebody's house and they're like, oh, ha, 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 I'm also in a secret society of wall builders. Look how I casually have like my wall building equipment. You turn around and run. You don't have to listen to it. Turn around and run. Okay. All right. Bye, y'all.